sailors, it's your co-captain Divya. The other co-captain is not here, unfortunately. Zoeya is traveling, and so she will be doing episode 4 individually. So for this episode, it's just gonna be me. And for this episode, I'll be talking about normalization. A brief recap, if you don't remember what that is, normalization is just, the act of normalizing certain things, like normalizing unhealthy behaviors or normalizing healthy behaviors, which I'll get into later, the two different sides of normalization. Normalization, just normalizing certain behaviors. And in the context of burnout, I'll specifically be talking about how normalizing unhealthy behaviors can lead to burnout and how normalizing healthy behaviors can prevent burnout. All about normalization. And last episode, we briefly introduced this idea as an external factor because, we're understanding our sources of stress, trying to understand why we are experiencing burnout from these factors, and one of those factors was normalization. And I want to emphasize in this episode that normalization can be as internal as it is external. Yes, we experience it from our immediate environments and surroundings, but it also comes from within, right? A lot of the times we normalize behaviors ourselves, and I can speak for that because it's a big part of toxic school culture, which, I can't even deny I participate in, just because it's become so normalized in our schools that it's kind of part of our everyday lives. And what I mean by that is talking about an common academic example, competition and comparison, right? In controlled amounts, it can be healthy, trying to understand how you perform in comparison to other people and how you can improve so you're performing at the level you want to. But it really turns unhealthy when we normalize it to the point that we're consistently comparing ourselves to other people. Every day or every other day, constantly asking other people how they performed and comparing ourselves to them to try and see if we're underperforming or outperforming them. And in the end, that always hurts one side of the competition, right? If you're underperforming, you don't feel like you're good enough. And if you're outperforming them, if you're constantly comparing yourself to them, then they're going to start feeling that they're not good enough. And so when we normalize that unhealthy behavior, we feel like we're not good enough, or they feel like they're not good enough. And then eventually they lose the motivation to compete anymore because they're constantly at this level where they're not performing at the level they want to, and they lose the motivation to even try. And that's that burnout. And that mentality that we perceive, it stems from the normalization of those unhealthy behaviors, right? Behaviors that if we do once or twice or practice once or twice, it's okay, right? In controlled amounts. But when we let it get out of hand, when we normalize it on an everyday basis, that's when we really start to experience that overwhelming stress that eventually builds up to burnout. And it's not just academic based, right? It can involve itself in our social lives or in our work lives, or even in between our boundaries, right? Between our academic lives and our social lives, when there's no breaks, that normalization can take in when we're normalizing not having boundaries and, stressing ourselves out so much that we don't have enough time to focus on ourselves and, practice self-care and other protective factors. Or maybe it's that we're not getting enough sleep, right? Taking maybe 3 hours of the time we need to take so our bodies can rest, taking a chunk of that time out to study, to prep for the PSATs, the SATs, or to work on our extracurriculars, AP classes, to cram in all this knowledge into our brain that we can't even use because we don't have enough energy to function the next day because we're not resting our bodies. And that physical exhaustion, the physical stress we experience every day, when we normalize that behavior of skipping out on hours of sleep, when we normalize that, we eventually hit this point where we're so physically exhausted, we can't even study anymore. We have no option but to sleep. And then eventually you notice that you're suddenly missing work, that you're skipping deadlines because you poured so much of your energy into your academic life that you forgot that you need to take care of yourself. And now the only thing you can do is take care of your body. And so that's why that balance between taking care of your mind, body, and still, engaging in the activities and curriculars that you want to, having that balance, that's why that's so important. And more often than not, that balance tends to tilt. That balance tends to tilt when we normalize unhealthy behaviors and we normalize not having those strict boundaries that we need to have. And so, normalization, whether it's in toxic school cultures or in our social circles. Right now, I can't think of an example of an unhealthy behavior socially because thankfully, I've never experienced something like that and I've never normalized something like that. But maybe you guys have. Maybe it's, trying to constantly fit in and not giving yourself enough time to focus on yourself, but always focusing on other people, how you can please them. Maybe you're normalizing that, like the stress of having to fit into a group that just doesn't match your vibe, doesn't match your personality, that stress. Maybe you normalize that behavior, that unhealthy behavior of changing who you are to fit in with others, just focusing too much on others. Maybe you're normalizing that behavior and that's what is causing your stress. That's what's causing you to experience burnout, where you don't even want to socialize anymore because you just feel like no one's going to want to appreciate you. No one's going to want to be your friend. So there's tons of examples of normalization, and all of these examples related to burnout so far have been negative because, yes, normalization can be really bad for our bodies and minds. But now I want to talk about how normalization can be good. A growing crisis of burnout in our immediate environments and communities is because of normalization. But we can prevent this crisis, we can prevent this burnout by also normalizing things like protective factors. When we normalize risk factors, right, all we get out from it is stress. And the more we normalize it, the more stress we get, and the faster we experience burnout. But what about when we normalize protective factors like self-care? Normalizing behaviors like, cuddling up with a blanket and watching your favorite movie, just taking a break, getting the rest that you need so you can function at your best the next day. Normalizing self-care needs. We had a whole series about the 25 anchors, where it's just a bunch of little self-care activities to, help you feel at your best. Normalizing that behavior can significantly reduce the risk of experiencing burnout because you're never going to completely eliminate stress from your life. There's normalization everywhere. You can't eliminate it from your environments because there's always going to be someone there that's normalizing these unhealthy behaviors. Or maybe you're always normalizing unhealthy behaviors internally. Normalization is just such a key part of our environments, and that's why I want to really concentrate on shifting the focus from unhealthy behaviors to healthy behaviors. Because normalization, like I said, you can't eliminate it from your environment. And in general, you can't eliminate stress. But you can turn that potential normalization of stress into healthy habits. Like I said, self-care. And it may feel like I'm rambling right now. Maybe I am. But it is really important that you normalize good behaviors. Everyone has a bad habit, and maybe I'm going off topic here, but it does seem obvious, right? Like, why would you want to normalize unhealthy behaviors and non-healthy behaviors? Like, that feels pretty obvious, right? But, normalization is just one of those things that you don't even realize it's happening because it just turns into an expectation. Like I said, competition, maybe you don't realize that you're unhealthily competing with other people until, someone points you out for it or someone calls you out, because it's just turned into an expectation to compare yourself to one another. And so it's not only until someone tells you that, like, hey, this is going too far, you're putting other people down and you're putting yourself down. It's not until you experience that, until you realize that, you're normalizing an unhealthy behavior, because that's what normalization is, making it normal. And to us, we don't try to stop normal. So you want to normalize healthy behaviors. Normalize taking care of your mental and physical health, not degrading it, because burnout stems from mental and physical exhaustion. So, like I said, normalize self-care. Maybe every day take a break from the studying and the extracurriculars and listen to your favorite song, or write in your journal how your day was. Express your emotions. Normalize practicing the 6 dimensions of wellness, right? Just give yourself time to rest and to take a break from all of the things kind of scattering our lives, all of the things causing our stress, right? If you can't eliminate stress, just try to prevent it. You can't fully eliminate it, but you can stop it from taking over your life. And the first step to stopping burnout, to stopping stress from completely taking over your life, is to normalize those healthy behaviors. Those behaviors that can limit the stress you experience on a daily basis. But yeah, that was a lot of me yapping. Usually it's nice to have another co-captain here, because, they can kind of keep me in check and they have their own unique things to say. But since this was just me, I kind of just poured out my mind here. But yeah, that's pretty much it for today's episode. I just really wanted to emphasize, or we, even though you can't see her, me and Zoeya just really wanted to emphasize normalization, because it's a really important part of the recovery process in burnout, but also the process of preventing it. And so I just want to drive that point home. Normalize healthy behaviors, not unhealthy ones. And actually, if you see your friends or your family participating in that normalization of unhealthy behaviors, call them out. Tell them, like, hey, you're just contributing to stress and burnout, and that's not okay. But other than that, yeah, that's it. That's all for today's episode. I will be including our little segment as usual, but since Zoeya is not here, there's fortunately not going to be any conclusion, since it's just me. But yeah, I hope you guys understood the message of this episode, that normalization is important, and how we normalize behaviors, or how we can normalize behaviors in good and bad ways. And yeah, I'm gonna stop yapping now.
Burnout Bunny is back. This time she's with her friends. Our little bunny has learned to surround herself with peers that contribute to a positive school culture. She really feels at ease with her friends, since they don't negatively compete with each other. After hearing everyone studying for the PSAT, Burnout Bunny has decided to study while still getting enough sleep to recharge. She also makes sure to take a study break every now and then, like practicing her dunking. I mean, bunnies can hop pretty high. Anyways, this helps her break free from the stress and calm the waves so she can sail smoothly. Burnout Bunny tries to normalize self-care and positive environments as much as possible, so she doesn't normalize consistent stress.